You say freedom is your greatest desire, yet the first thing you do when you wake up is look at other people's lives on your phone. Are you truly free, or are you living in a state of slavery you created with your own hands? If this question makes you uncomfortable, you're in the right place. Because this isn't just a critique of technology addiction. This is a modern photograph of the most fundamental tension, the deepest paradox of being human. And the person who took the philosophical X-ray of this photograph is none other than one of the 20th century's most provocative minds, Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre diagnosed this feeling decades before you were born. He explained how our most sacred ideal, freedom, is also our greatest fear and an unbearable burden. And to escape this burden, he showed how we invent countless comfortable prisons and voluntary slaveries for ourselves, much like those bright screens. In this video, we will go far beyond a typical philosophy lesson. Using Sartre as our guide, we will delve into the origins of that deep urge that makes you reach for your phone in the morning. So, what is this diagnosis? What is the brutal truth at the root of the slavery that locks you to the screen in the morning and accompanies you for the rest of your life? It all begins with a sentence from Sartre that strikes our minds like a sledgehammer. Existence precedes essence. Wait a second. For you to truly understand how radical this sentence is and how it explains why you reach for that bright screen every morning, you need to forget thousands of years of intellectual history for a moment and come with me. According to the traditional view, everything has an essence, a definition, a purpose. Let's use Sartre's own example, a letter opener. Before a craftsman makes this tool, he conceives of its purpose, its essence, in his mind. The tool's existence serves this predetermined essence. According to the traditional view, you are like a letter opener. A power that created you, God, nature, the universe, has given you an essence, a soul, a purpose, a human nature. Your duty is to live in accordance with this essence. Sartre, as an atheist existentialist, shatters this idea with a sledgehammer. In his world, there is no creator to give you a purpose or a definition. This means you are not a knife. You are an empty consciousness thrown into the world. You have no user manual, no destiny, no human nature. First, you exist. You find yourself in a body, at a time, in a place. After that, and only after that, you create your own essence with every choice you make, every step you take, every dream you build. This means that the sentence, "That's just the way I am," is fundamentally a lie. No one is born a coward or a hero. A person becomes a coward by choosing cowardly actions. A person becomes a hero by choosing heroic actions. No one exists as artistic or bad at math. One chooses to engage with art or to avoid math. Every moment, every second, you have the power and the responsibility to reinvent who you are. This is what the phrase "condemned to be free" means. It is a condemnation because you cannot resign from this freedom. Even choosing not to choose is a choice. You cannot surrender yourself to the determinism of a rock or a tree. They are what they are. You, however, are not what you are. You are always the potential of what you can be. This absolute freedom places an unimaginable burden of responsibility on your shoulders. If there is no destiny, no nature, no God to take refuge in, then the responsibility for everything in your life, your successes, your failures, your relationships, your regrets, is entirely yours. Sartre makes this burden even heavier. When you make a choice as a human being, he says, you're claiming that your choice is the right one, not just for you, but for all of humanity. As you create yourself, you are also defining an image of the ideal human being. This adds a universal weight to your every decision, and this weight is a wearing psychological burden, one that is quite difficult to carry alone for long. So what does this weight feel like exactly? How does this absolute freedom and responsibility echo in your deepest self, in the recesses of your soul? This is where we move from the logical framework of the diagnosis to confront its emotional wreckage. According to Sartre, living with this truth leaves you face to face with three fundamental emotions: anguish, forlornness, and despair. The first is anguish, angoisse. This is not fear in the sense we know it. Fear is directed at a specific object in the world. Anguish, however, is objectless. Anguish is the dizziness you feel from your own freedom. Let's reconsider Sartre's famous cliff analogy. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Your fear is not of falling. The real anguish is the dizzying and unsettling moment you realize that even if you know no external force will push you, you possess the freedom to throw yourself off. Nothing, not your moral codes, not your past, not your character, can stop you from doing it. In that moment, you confront the absolute nature of your freedom, and it is terrifying. This is precisely the paralysis of choice in modern life. Hundreds of career paths, thousands of potential partners, infinite lifestyles. This ocean of infinite options, with no authority to tell you what to do, leaves you at the bottom of the bottomless cliff of anguish. The second is forlornness, délaissement. This is confronting the fact that there is no external, universal value system to guide you. If there is no divine voice, no cosmic rulebook to whisper right and wrong in your ear, then you are completely alone in creating values. Dostoevsky's "If God does not exist, everything is permitted" is, for Sartre, not a cry of liberation, but a statement of forlornness. In the most difficult decisions of your life, whether to end a relationship, to abandon a career, to remain true to a principle, there is no ultimate authority you can consult. You can get advice, you can read books, but in the end, you are alone with the full responsibility of that decision. It is like being in the middle of the ocean without a compass, with no harbor to seek refuge in. And the third is despair, désespoir. This is not pessimism or inaction. Sartrean despair is a ruthless realism. It is the acceptance that we can only rely on what is within our own control and cannot depend on the world of probabilities. When you embark on a project, you cannot hope that your friends will help you, that the world will treat you fairly, or that luck will be on your side. Hope puts you in a state of passive waiting. Despair, however, pushes you to act. You focus only on what you can do. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself, says Sartre. You are defined not by your dreams, intentions, or potential, but only by the actions you carry out. This is the brutal difference between saying, "I'm going to be a writer one day," and sitting down to write every day. Let's admit it, no one can live constantly in a whirlwind of anguish, forlornness, and despair. It's a difficult psychological burden to bear. So what do? Your mind develops an incredibly creative and equally insidious mechanism to escape this unbearable truth. This is where we arrive at the heart of the diagnosis, the most crucial point of the story. The genius but cowardly trick your mind plays on you. Sartre gives it its famous name, mauvaise foi, or bad faith. This is not simply lying. This is an act of internal self-deception, where the deceiver and the deceived are the same person. It is the act of seeing yourself not as a free consciousness, but as a fixed, determined thing, in order to escape the responsibility that comes with freedom. It is to deny the dynamic existence that comes with being human and to imprison yourself in the rigid nature of an object. Sartre says that human beings have a dual nature. On one hand, there is facticity, your body, your past, your circumstances. On the other, there is transcendence, your consciousness, that is, your freedom to surpass this facticity and create a future. Bad faith is to deny one of these poles and take refuge solely in the other. Now, let's translate this theory into the concrete moments of your daily life. The sentence, "That's just how I am," is perhaps the most insidious form of bad faith. I'm a short-tempered person. It's my nature. I've never been an organized person. With these sentences, you present behavioral patterns that you are free to change as if they were unchangeable facts of your DNA. You lock yourself in a fixed character box. This gives you the perfect excuse. I didn't do it, my character did. The responsibility is lifted from you and placed on that imaginary, fixed thing. Well, let's consider one of the most modern paradoxes, the freelancer or remote worker. On paper, you are completely free. No office, no boss, no set hours. But to escape the anguish created by this absolute freedom, you build new prisons for yourself. You start obsessively tracking your time with productivity apps. You become a slave to your clients' every beck and call. And worst of all, you reduce your identity to the role of the always working, busy, entrepreneurial person. You sacrifice your freedom for that popular and comfortable role known as hustle culture. Sartre's classic example of the waiter illustrates this perfectly. That waiter performs his job a little too mechanically, a little too waiter-like, because he is fleeing from the fact that he is a free man who could walk away from that apron at any moment. He is not a human being who is a waiter, but a waiter in human form. Because playing a role is easier than being free. So, is there no cost to these roles, these comfortable excuses? Of course there is, and the cost is much heavier than you think. It is to give up on authenticity. The cost is to live an inauthentic life, a life where you are constantly playing a role, lying to yourself and to others, creates an internal restlessness, a feeling of wrongness. This is one of the root causes of that unexplainable modern melancholy, that feeling of something is missing, but I don't know what. This is your freedom whispering to you from behind the prison walls. And bad faith turns you into a defenseless slave to the gaze of others. What Sartre calls the look, le regard, is the moment you feel yourself being turned into an object, a type, smart, funny, clumsy, boring, in someone else's eyes. Today's social media culture is a gigantic laboratory for this concept. With that perfect vacation photo you share, you hope to become the object of the happy person living their best life in the eyes of your followers. With the successful professional identity you display on LinkedIn, you aim to become a valuable employee object in the eyes of a hiring manager. Your obsessive checking of who has viewed your story shows how you are objectified by the look of others and how much you need this objectification. A person living in bad faith, having already denied their own freedom, outsources their identity to the definitions and likes of others. Looking at this whole picture, one can't help but ask, is there a way out of this prison we have built with our own hands and fortified with the gazes of others? Sartre does not sell you a 5-step plan to happiness or positive affirmations. His philosophy is as ruthless as it is honest. He is skeptical about whether it is possible to be completely and forever free of bad faith, because it is a constant tension that is part of being human. However, he sees hope in the struggle. Authenticity for Sartre is not a destination but a process. It is not about finding your true self, because there is no fixed self to be found. Authenticity is not something to be found, but something to be done every single moment. To be authentic is to honestly accept your situation, facticity, and your potential to transcend that situation, transcendence, at the same time. It is to refuse self-deception and to assume full responsibility for your actions, along with all the anguish it brings. This does not mean that anguish disappears. On the contrary, it means learning to dance with anguish. It is to feel the dizziness that freedom brings, but to still hold the helm. This philosophical journey is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a powerful mirror in which to examine your life. So what will you do after looking in this mirror? This struggle for authenticity is not a goal, but a practice. Here are 3 concrete steps to begin this practice. First, the awareness exercise. For one day, mentally note when you use phrases like, "I have to," "That's just my nature," or "There's nothing I can do." Don't judge, just notice. This is the clearest way to take inventory of the lies you tell yourself. Second, the choice muscle exercise. Even when making the simplest decision of the day, coffee or tea, pause for a second. Feel that both options are entirely yours, and that no external force is compelling you. This is a small exercise that strengthens the muscle of freedom. Third, the confrontation. In silence, instead of grabbing your phone first thing in the morning, try sitting with your thoughts for just 5 minutes. Yes, it will be uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the sound of your freedom. Now I ask you that most difficult question again, one last time. Forget big questions like, what is your purpose in life? Ask yourself a more honest, more brutal question. In which area of my life have I built the most comfortable, most solid cage for myself to escape from the terror of freedom? What are the bars of that cage forged from? Which excuses, which I have to's, which that's just how I am's? You don't have to find the answer. Just honestly notice the cage. It is like a prisoner, for the first time, truly feeling the bars of the cell they have lived in for years. And the path to freedom only begins when you recognize the cold, hard reality of those bars, because that door isn't actually locked. It's just waiting to be pushed.